Okay, good afternoon, everybody. As I'm sure many of you can appreciate, there was we did not originally intend to have any sort of press conference on this case. My concern has always been what's appropriate, proper, and effective law enforcement. Mr. Buscetta, about whom we will have an announcement now, is the man whose life is in real danger. So the precautions that were taken in the interest of effective law enforcement and in the interest of protecting Mr. Buscetta. I have been gravely disturbed by the premature release of information concerning his arrival in this country, as well as information concerning any possible role Mr. Buscetta may play as a witness in certain pending cases of proceedings. So although I will do my best to inform you, I hope you understand that there's a limited amount of information I can provide and a limited number of questions that I can answer. Tommaso Buscetta arrived in the United States last night from Italy. At approximately 1 a.m., Mr. Buscetta arrived at the Marine Air Terminal at LaGuardia Airport aboard a United States Drug Enforcement Administration aircraft. He had previously arrived at McGuire Air Force Base in New Jersey aboard a military flight. Upon his arrival, Buscetta was escorted to a secure location where, under extraordinary security precautions, Mr. Buscetta, his attorney, Assistant United States Attorney Charles Rose of this office, appeared before Judge Joseph McLaughlin of the Eastern District of New York District Court. Security was provided by the Drug Enforcement Administration, the United States Marshal Service, and the Port Authority Police Department, to whom I am very grateful. Following the arraignment before Judge McLaughlin, Mr. Buscetta was immediately transported to an undisclosed location in the United States by Drug Enforcement Administration officials. Mr. Buscetta has been extradited to the United States on a 1973 indictment out of this district, filed in the United States District Court for the Eastern District of New York, and upon his arrival in the United States was immediately arrested by Drug Enforcement Administration agents for narcotics trafficking. Buscetta was charged in that 1973 indictment, along with 19 other defendants, with importing over 200 kilograms of heroin into the United States between the period 1969 and 1972. The Eastern District indictment is the only charge pending against Mr. Buscetta at this time. Mr. Buscetta will be returned for an appearance before the United States District Court in the Eastern District of New York here in Brooklyn within a couple of weeks. You will be notified of that appearance in advance, and until that time, we will have no further comment except to describe in the broadest terms what the underlying indictment of Mr. Buscetta and his 19 co-defendants is. And I might add, copies of that document will be available to you as soon as we conclude this brief proceeding. The charges involve the conspiracy to import and distribute from France, Italy, and South America via Mexico a high volume of heroin. Mr. Buscetta is named in all 6 counts. As I said before, he has 19 co-defendants. 8 of those defendants have been already convicted or previously convicted in the Eastern District of New York. The remaining defendants are either deceased or are currently serving sentences having been convicted in foreign countries. I have nothing further.
One thing I want to clear up here logistically is you say he arrived in the United States last night from Italy, and he arrived at Marine Air Terminal LaGuardia, but you ad-libbed that he arrived at McGuire Air Force Base.
He originally landed, his transatlantic voyage took him to McGuire Air Force Base. He was then shuttled by DEA airplane into the Eastern District for arraignment as the extradition treaty requires, and immediately then removed to an undisclosed site.
Okay, was he brought on an Air Force plane over there to McGuire?
He was on a military flight into McGuire Air Force Base and then a Drug Enforcement Administration flight into the Eastern District.
Very good, thank you.
Where was he
Mr.
arraigned?
Dearie, can you characterize the significance of Mr. Buscetta's presence here in the United States?
I can, but I choose not to at this time.
Where was he arraigned, Ray?
He was arraigned in a conference room facility immediately adjacent to the Marine Air Terminal facilities out adjacent to LaGuardia Airport.
Why was it necessary to bring him to the United States now?
Well, the timing was one dictated by security precautions, and obviously although I'm not going to contemplate on, comment on any contemplated activities or role that he may play. It's certainly in anticipation of some role in the near future.
Can you reveal what you hope to learn from him?
No,
How old is Mr. Buscetta?
I don't know, but I can get that.
How old?
56 years of age.
Now, is he going to be questioned only by the Eastern District or by federal authorities in the Southern District or federal authorities all over the country?
I'm not going to comment on the planned activities for Mr. Buscetta. Needless to say, any activities that will take place in the interest of effective law enforcement, be that in the Eastern District of New York or wherever.
Will he testify before a grand jury?
No
here?
comments whatsoever.
Dearie, you seem to have expressed some discomfort about the nature of calling this particular press conference. You made reference to some premature information. What did you mean by that?
Well, as I understand it, information concerning his departure from Italy was released as early as last night. I understand there has been some publication today that reported the activities. I understand that one of the networks last night, and by the way, I'm not finding fault with the networks or the news media, and when we're dealing with a situation as sensitive as this, with a man as potentially valuable, as many people believe to think he is, and with an obvious, compelling security problem, it seemed to me that the authorities, both here and abroad, ought to be able to accomplish in a relatively short period of time his arrival, arraignment, and removal without that information getting out to unauthorized people. It's disappointing.
Who are you disappointed in?
But frankly, at this point, I don't know.
I mean, the press or the authorities?
I just said I'm not disappointed in the press. You're doing your jobs. I have no problem.
Have there been death threats again?
I have no comment on that.
Is indicted also in a pizza connection case and
I'm not going to comment on the Pizza Connection case or any other case. The sole charges outstanding against him at this time in the United States will be found in the indictment, which you can pick up on your way out.
Well, are you going to try to make a deal with him? I mean, he faces these charges, but you also want him to cooperate, obviously. So what is the,
I understand, to my regret, that there have been many published stories concerning his role or anticipated role, and I understand that the stories reflect his willingness to cooperate, but beside that, I'm not making any comment at this time.
he hasn't indicated he'll cooperate?
I'm making no comment.
At what time was he actually arraigned, Mr. Dearie?
I think it was, the actual arraignment, I think, took place sometime around 1:30 in the morning.
What legal precedent do you have for a closed private arraignment?
Innumerable. I don't have that name, but it's my understanding until the exact question of his representation is clarified.
The attorney wishes not to be disclosed?
The attorney's name.
Public record?
If it's a matter of public
Is
record,
this a sealed proceeding? Will appear, right?
presumably, but that will be sealed.
Well, is that sealed?
That's correct.
Well, why is that sealed if that was just involves a not guilty plea? If nothing was revealed,
In the hope that we would be able to conclude these proceedings and put Mr. Buscetta in a safe location, and then make a simple statement to the press